Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Awesome Albums with Awesome Andrew. I'm going to jump into a decade I haven't covered yet, the 80s. I know a couple months ago I mentioned I was going to do Van Halen's album MCMLXXXIV, or just 1984. As the name suggests, it was released in 1984, January 9th to be more specific. The fact that it was released in 1984 breaks their streak of releasing one album every year, something they've had since 1978, and they only missed it by 9 days. Some neat things about this album is that the album reached Diamond, which means they sold over 10 million copies. In fact, they sold over 12 million copies. It had 4 singles on it, and naturally I'll cover those today in this video. And unlike their last album, Diver Down in 1982, which almost half the albums were covers from other musicians, 1984 had entirely new content. 1984 was one of the best-selling hard rock albums of all time, sharing heights with AC/DC, Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses, Led Zeppelin, and Metallica, and several others. Oh, and I plan to talk about these videos on this channel, so if you're excited for those, they'll be coming soon. And to introduce the group, we have our guitarist, Eddie Van Halen, singer, David Lee Roth. This is also the last album until A Different Kind of Truth in 2012 to feature David Lee Roth. Drummer, Alex Van Halen, Eddie's older brother, and bassist, Michael Anthony. This album was the first album to be recorded in their new home studio, now known as 5150 Studios. And speaking of the album, let's look at that album cover. The painting was created by Margot Nahas, and she wasn't actually commissioned by Van Halen. The band originally wanted her to create a painting of 4 dancing chrome women, but that unfortunately was too hard for her because of the reflective property of the piece. Her husband took her portfolio to the band, and they fell in love with the painting of a young cherub smoking a cigarette. She based the painting on a photo of a friend's 2-year-old son named Carter Helm, whom she captured with the styled hair holding a candy cigarette. The image caused some controversy, and some UK record stores won't even stock the album in their stores, and others would censor the cigarette with a sticker or something. I feel this album cover is the most iconic of all Van Halen's album covers. Now let's hear the album that sold over 12 million copies. The album starts off with an instrumental track which shares the same name as the album itself. Notice a sound that you don't normally hear in Van Halen albums, a synthesizer. This doesn't sound like Van Halen. This is actually one of the 3 songs that has a synthesizer in it. Another song with that in there is Jump. I'll bet you didn't catch that joke I made earlier about how I'm going to jump into a decade I haven't covered yet, the 80s. Yeah, I guess that joke was a little dumb, but the song isn't. The synthesizer in this song is both beautiful and catchy. Eddie Van Halen proves he can play synthesizer as well as he can play guitar. In fact, after the album came out, synthesizer sales increased drastically almost overnight, and music stores were jam-packed in the keyboard department of aspiring musicians trying to play the song on keyboard. Similar to how back in the 70s and even still today, on how guitar departments are jam-packed full of people trying to play Stairway to Heaven. When Eddie presented this song to the rest of the group, they hated it. David Lee Roth is like, "You're a guitar hero. You shouldn't be playing keyboards." And then Eddie's like, "If I want to play synthesizers, I'm going to play synthesizers." Eddie wrote the song on a sequential Circuits Prophet 10 in his bedroom while the studio was being built. Every time he got the sound that he wanted, the keyboard would start smoking and blow a fuse. He was suggested an Oberheim OBXA, which got him the sound that he wanted, although the late nights of him writing the song and playing the song over and over got his wife, actress Valerie Bertinelli, very annoyed with him playing the same thing over and over. This is also the first and only Van Halen song to reach the number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 singles. One more thing I'd like to cover with the song is the music video. The music video showed some of the tensions that led up to Roth's departure. The video was produced by Robert Lombard, who wanted to show a more personal side of the band. Roth wanted the performance to be intercut with him doing things like riding a motorcycle and then getting arrested for wearing nothing but a towel, various things like that. Lombard brought the video footage to Eddie and Alex to review, and then 2 days later the band manager fired him for bypassing Roth, and then he never received the award at the MTV Awards. Lombard also mentioned in I Want My MTV that he didn't shoot the band together until the end of the day because that is how high the tension was. To him, he felt that Roth felt that he was bigger than the rest of the group. Some of the Roth footage was also used in another song, Panama. And speaking of Panama, that's the name of the third track. The song has absolutely nothing to do with the country. It all began with an interview that Roth had in the early 80s when he was on the Howard Stern show. He said that an interviewer pointed out to him that all his lyrics had to do with either sex, drugs, or fast cars. Sometime either during or after that, he realized, I don't have a song about fast cars. So then he started writing the lyrics for Panama, which he later admitted that the song was really about a stripper that he met in Arizona, and he didn't realize it. So much for writing a song about fast cars. The guys wanted Eddie Van Halen to write a song with an AC/DC beat. It ended up being Panama, which doesn't really have an AC/DC beat to it, but that was his interpretation of it. Eddie actually recorded sounds from his car here. Engineer Don Landy thought it would be awesome if Eddie were to drive his Lamborghini up to the studio and mic it. This song also had an official music video made, and in the music video, Michael Anthony was playing a bass in the shape of a Jack Daniels bottle. This was a product placement coup against MTV, which had a strict policy against advertisement. In fact, ZZ Top had to remove a shot of Schlitz beer from one of their videos before it would be aired. However, in Van Halen's case, since it was Michael Anthony's bass, there was no really good way to edit that out, and so they had to air it. Top Jimmy. Eddie had a melody in his head, and he tuned his guitar to that melody. Steve Ripley, an American recording artist, record producer, songwriter, studio engineer, and inventor, sent Eddie one of his guitars, which had like thousands of knobs on it. And then he's like, that's too much. And so then he sent him another one, which was more of a prototype with less knobs on it. Eddie really liked the sound of that guitar, and so he tuned that guitar to Top Jimmy. The song also was inspired by Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs, who shared the stages in the early 80s LA club scene with punk upstarts. Drop Dead Legs. This song introduced new territory that paved the way for the band's next chapter. The song was inspired by AC/DC's Back in Black. Eddie feels Drop Dead Legs is almost a jazz version of Back in Black. The descending progression is similar, but Eddie put a lot more notes in it. Well, that concludes the side 1 on vinyl. Side 2 starts off with another one of Van Halen's singles, Hot for Teacher. Alex Van Halen strung together 4 bass drums and then using only 2 for the rest of the song, but it's still a great example of double bass drumming. Eddie used a Gibson Flying V guitar, which allowed him to switch pickups between the quiet and the loud sections. The song, as it sounds, is about being lustfully attracted to your teacher, which appealed to a new generation of Van Halen fans who felt that they could relate to the message, and they absolutely loved the music video. It drew protests from the Parent Music Resource Center for its sexually suggestive lyrics and video which featured a teacher character stripping. Van Halen actually wasn't the first to have a song called Hot for Teacher. That credit goes to Thunder Train, which had a song called Hot for Teacher, which came out in 1977, although it's a different song than the Van Halen song. Unfortunately, no outtakes were saved, and so there were no alternate versions either. Archivist Brian Kehoe discovered this when he was working on a proposed box set of Van Halen albums during the Roth years. I'll Wait. This is the 3rd song on the album with synthesizer. Producer Ted Templeton hated the song because when Eddie played the song to him, all Ted could do was hum Hold Your Head Up by Argent, which made Eddie mad because he says, no, it doesn't sound like that. They had the track made, but they needed lyrics. Templeton calls up Michael McDonald, ex-member of the Doobie Brothers, to come in to help. Templeton produced McDonald's solo album, If That's What It Takes, and serving as co-producer on the next album, No Looking Back. When Ted heard that they needed lyrics, he knew exactly who to call. McDonald sat with Roth for the writing sessions, which I find that is a very interesting combination. I mean, the guy who wrote songs like with a band like Van Halen? I guess lyrics are just lyrics, though. Some copies of the album give McDonald a credit, and other albums don't. Mine unfortunately doesn't. The next song is Girls Gone Bad. The origin of the song is kind of funny. Eddie had a micro cassette recorder with him and recorded the idea for the song while humming and whistling into it while in the closet of a hotel room that him and his wife were staying at while she was sleeping. He pretty much wrote the whole song in that state, and then when he got home, he put the song together. The song is almost a template for about 100 pop metal songs that would exist in the next 10 years. And the song is about Midwestern girls moving to LA to make it only to find the nasty side of the City of Dreams. House of Pain concludes the album. The song originally dates back to the demos he recorded with Gene Simmons and the Warner Brothers demos. Although the only thing that is the same is the main riff. The intro and the verses are completely different. This is the fourth single on the album, acting as the B-side for Jump. With that being said, in 1991, a group called House of Pain released a hit song called Jump Around. That's an odd similarity. Well, that concludes the album. This album was awesome enough to reach number 2 on the charts. Just number 2? Not number 1? Who was number 1? Oh, Thriller! Yeah, that's kind of a big album. It might not have been as big, maybe, if Eddie Van Halen wasn't playing guitar on the song Beat It. Yeah, I bet that backfired on him when he tried to release this album. But still, reaching number 2 is still fantastic. And again, this album has Van Halen's number 1 single, and the fact that it has 4 singles on this album, that's a good album right there. And this has been Awesome Andrew of Awesome Albums, telling you why Van Halen's album 1984 is an awesome album, and I will see you guys next time.